This is going to be a new episode for my podcast. In this podcast, I have invited Eswar, and we are going to discuss a couple of things about cryptocurrencies, stocks, maybe some health and nutrition. A disclaimer for you people would be here that don't take it as any recommendation advice, don't take it as any suggestion or a tip to buy a particular coin or a crypto or any kind of thing whatsoever. It's just a conversation between two friends. So welcome to my podcast, Eswar.
Thanks for having me, Varnit. It's a pleasure. You know, we've known each other for quite a while now, and I'm thanks for having me.
Yeah. So how are you doing? I just heard while we started the podcast that you got COVID, and so how are your symptoms? How are you holding up?
Yeah, man, it's actually really crazy because I've been like really I've been trying extremely hard to social distance, stay isolated from other people, not spend too much time outside. And it's crazy. Like I had like a 2-year winning streak against this virus, and it broke within like a couple of hours. So but I mean, I'm glad, like, I'm fully vaccinated, and like the symptoms are like mild to almost non-existent now, so it's all good.
All right. So for the listeners who are listening to this, and I just know Eswar from a non-profit that I used to work for a couple of years ago. Not years, maybe a year or two ago. I was working as a finance fellow / strategist when I came across Eswar. So those were some good times, right?
Most definitely, man. By the way, are you still like associated with the NGO in any way?
No, I actually left Make a Difference like in the mid of my term as a strategist because it was getting a little overwhelming and I was too occupied with my own like personal branding and my work and everything. It got too hectic, so I had to leave in between.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's just get into the podcast and start off by talking about little about stocks. Like, do you think investing in stocks is something mandatory, or do you think someone is losing on a couple of benefits if they don't invest in stocks at all? What's your take on it?
Okay, so I think that before I talk about the stock market, we should contextualize it along with the economy. So as a developing country, right, we have immense potential for economic growth. And we have seen this over the past couple of decades, ever since our economy was liberalized in the 1990s, and also with the future projections for our economy by major organizations like the IMF.
All right.
So in recent history, we've had a couple of major roadblocks, such as demonetization in 2016, and of course, COVID over the past 2 years. But like, despite these roadblocks, we still have a bright future over the long term. So in the backdrop of all of this positive information, I think it would definitely suit us to invest our money in the stock market now as compared to using traditional methods of investing, such as, for example, putting money in the fixed deposit for a certain number of years. So I feel that, yeah, definitely, like with the way that things are looking now and for the long term, we should start to invest more in the stock market.
Yeah, that makes sense. But do you think there are any downsides of investing in the stock market?
I think, yeah, most definitely. So the thing is, like, a lot of the information that we receive nowadays from the stock market is that, like, it's kind of hype driven, and that people are sort of investing without really thinking about the important factors such as financials or the current state of the company, or how they feel that they will increase their profits, and like whether they have a solid vision for the future of their company or not. So like I think what's really important is people invest with their brain and not their heart.
Yeah.
And that they actually they make financial decisions that are backed by solid evidence rather than just hype or following what other investors do.
Yeah, it completely makes sense. I agree. I will admit that I have made some rash, or let's just call it stupid, decisions based on what I thought is like fear of missing out. Like some people were saying that the stock will go like this, or it will reach that ceiling, or stuff like that. So I have made that mistake like quite recently, but I wouldn't like even suggest someone to be emotional about buying and purchasing and whatever that is. So you need to be having some rationality behind why are you putting your hard-earned money in something. I would also agree that investing in stocks is mostly a good idea, given that you know what you're doing. If you don't know what you're doing, get a financial consultant's help. They will be able to guide you what to do about it. And so what about you? When did you start your investing journey?
Right. So I started my investing journey in November of 2019. At that time, it was like an advice from like a classmate of mine in college. And at that time, I wasn't really taking it serious. Like I put maybe 300 or 400 rupees in one stock and like didn't look at my portfolio for months.
All right.
And so I'd say like the moment actually started taking it seriously was when COVID hit. Like at that time, I had like a little bit of capital, but at that time I also had so much free time, right, to do research and actually make strategies on which stocks I'd invest for the long term. So
Okay.
yeah, like I'd say like like I've been investing seriously for 2 years.
All right. So from what I can guess, you are thinking long term instead of short term gains, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so that's what I'm also aiming for, because I don't have that kind of time to keep a close eye on day-to-day trading kind of things or the approach that is involved. I know some of the people like do this day-to-day trading, and some of them are even successful doing that, but that's just not my cup of tea.
Yeah, it's not my cup of tea either. Like a fun fact, actually, I read a couple of days ago is that people who do like options trading and like really short-term investments, they end up usually not making more than what you'd get from a fixed deposit.
That's
So like
interesting.
it's extremely volatile. Like you can get really lucky, but you can also lose a lot of money in a very short amount of time. So it's extremely risky, but for people who know what they're doing, they can go right ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it does take a lot of getting to know the market, how it behaves, how it reacts, and it's a fact that you can time the market. So that's why there are so many SIPs that keeps floating around, that you need to be very systematic with your investment, do it monthly, either the market is up or low. I think that's a decent approach considering all things, right?
Most definitely. And the thing is, like, you don't even have to invest in equities directly. You can always do mutual funds or debt funds. Like they have all these different kinds of funds depending on your risk appetite that
Yeah.
you can approach.
So was it overwhelming for you when you came across the stock market? Something scary or something intimidating?
I mean, for me, it wasn't that scary because like I tend to usually know what I'm doing. Of course, I have made mistakes like the same as you have. Like I buy a stock one day and I sell it the same day because of like emotional decisions. Like I hear all of a sudden that the stock isn't going to do well in the long term, and it ultimately does later on. So I've definitely had those moments, but generally I tend to trust my gut and not change my decisions halfway through.
All right. So just let's just talk about India and the Indian economy. I assume that you are living in India and you're planning to do for the next couple of years, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
definitely and yeah, plan upon staying here for the long term.
All right. So do you have any favorite companies that are based in India that you have some high hopes from? And again, I'll repeat that this is not a recommendation or a stock purchase advice. Just we're just going to discuss about our favorite companies, if any.
Yeah, so I can think of two off the top of my head. The first one is Asian Paints.
All
So
right.
if you've not heard of them, they're obviously a company that sells different kinds of paints for your walls and exterior stuff. So they have an extremely low amount of debt, but they also have a solid vision for the future, and they have a very large market share. So these are some of the factors which I took into consideration before investing in Asian paints, and I do feel that they will uh, increase in value. Like their shares will increase in value in the future. So that's one company which I invest in, and another one I would say is probably Bajaj Finance. So
Okay.
they're basically a financial company that provides loans, and they also have pretty low debt. They also have a strong brand value, and customer loyalty, and they also have a solid vision for the future. So they are definitely another company that I invest in and that I hope to continue to invest in for a very long time.
All right, that's nice. And let's just forget about investing point of view, and let's just say as a general ethics or innovative purposes, do you have any favorite kind of company in mind when it comes to that? I'm not talking about investing, just as a general personal liking towards them, even though you're not going to invest in them.
So I don't really have a personal like towards any particular company, but I do have like companies which I would strongly avoid.
So in a nutshell, talking about stocks, we should consider that we shouldn't be emotionally attached towards a particular brand or something. Emotional attachment is good when you are making a pitch, when a company makes a pitch, in that case it's good. But when you're purchasing stocks, especially for long term, you should seriously consider checking their financials and their performance for at least the past couple of years, or in the best case you should take an advice from a financial consultant, if I'm right.
Yes, and one more important suggestion I'd add is that past performance is not always indicative of future growth. So what that means is just because they've increased in value, say by 20 or 30% the last couple of years, it doesn't mean that they will increase by the same amount in the next couple of years. So that's where the idea of seeing like whether they have a solid vision for the future comes in. So you have to consider that as well.
Yeah, and plus if there are some really popular companies out there, you will get to know the feedback right away from the general public itself. You will know how their products are, how they do business, how they provide after sales services and things like that. That will make things a little clearer on how they're going to perform for future, or at least in the present.
Yes, of
Exactly.
course.
And moving on to the next topic that I had in mind was cryptocurrency. It always seems to grab some kind of attention, or some kind of, it's always in the limelight for some reason or the other, even good, bad, anything. And there have been tons of speculation around the digital assets since the budget was passed in India. So I'm not talking about on an international level, let's just talk about India. What do you think the future of cryptocurrency looks like? Do you have any hopes from it, or it's just going to die away?
So, okay, so I think cryptocurrency as a concept, it's pretty novel. Like, of course, it's decentralized and you can use it to make anonymous transactions. So as a concept, I think it's cool. But I think as an investment tool, like it's highly volatile and it's very speculative. Like it can increase by 20 or 30% in one day and the next day can drop by like 80%. So there's definitely a lot of like volatility that surrounds many of these crypto coins like Bitcoin or Ethereum. So I would say like as a means of investment, it definitely has some scope for the long term, but you have to be extremely careful with how much money you invest in it. And I like as a rule of thumb, when it comes to high volatility instruments like cryptocurrency, I always suggest that you only put however much you feel that you can afford to lose.
Okay. And for my take on this would be like, it uses a blockchain technology to base upon, right? It builds its stuff on that technology. So I'm more interested in the blockchain technology side of things, because that seems to be something. You must have heard about conversations about Web3 or something like that, right? You would have heard about things or terms like that. If I'm
I
if I'm
actually haven't like I'm not
All
like
right.
I'm not that like too in depth into it. I kind of
Okay.
know like the
All
basics.
right, so there's like a recent, not even that recent, but like in a couple of months, I've observed the keywords like Web3, blockchain, crypto, and stuff like that being correlated, interrelated. You would have heard of, especially of NFTs, right? NFTs are like the recent hype, cool, something that
Yeah.
people are getting into. Most of them would be fad or scams, but maybe some of them will gain traction and get very popular, and that's, no one will know how it reacts, but it's the technology that's behind it which seems to be interesting for sure. That the transparency, like suppose that they say that you have a universal ledger, you can see every transaction and you can't like cheat on it or hide from it and stuff like that. So what do you think about the the technology that is being used for cryptocurrency? Do you think it's something which should be trusted upon, or is it something that we should be ambiguous about?
I think the technology behind cryptocurrency, of course, it is like it can be used for good purposes. Like they say in Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. So I do feel like if you think about it from that sense, there are uses, but like personally, I don't know too much about the the, the technology that goes behind crypto, but I do feel that like it can have some good use in the future.
All right. So in crypto, like even I don't have a lot of expertise, but it's something that seems to fascinate people because it has high risk, but it also had high returns. Like people were investing some amount of money, and maybe suppose someone invested in Bitcoin like 4 5 years ago, they would have not expected it to boom like that. But some people were late to the party, and with the fear of missing out, they invested a lot of money and then lost tons of money doing the same. And I think that's
Right.
quite risky, and I wouldn't even recommend it to like consumers. Even if someone has some extra cash laying around, extra money to spend, they should still be smart about it and take some better decision while investing in cryptocurrency, and maybe choose the popular ones instead of the new whatever pizza coins or whatever crap they throw up every
Bitcoin's
random day.
Yeah, for sure. I 100% agree with you.
All right. And the next thing, I'll just take a big tangent or a U-turn from this whole conversation, and let's just discuss about the sports side of things, because I remember that we discussed a couple of times about your interest in MMA or some kind of the sport or the other, and it's a very touchy subject, but I'm going to be straight with you. It's about steroids, or let's just say physical, that drugs that people consume, those external drugs or performance enhancing drugs that some people consume in their sports. What do you think, or what are your thoughts on this one?
Okay, so I think that like as an athlete, right? Like when you use steroids or performance enhancing drugs, it shows that like you're not only disingenuous to your fellow competitors, but also to yourself. Like you're basically creating an illusion that you're a better athlete than you really are. And like okay, the thing is like I'm not an athlete, right? Like I just enjoy watching sports, and I enjoy analyzing it, and like I enjoy being a spectator. So like with that being said, like you have to think about it sometimes in the terms like or from the perspective of a competitor, right? Like okay, for example, in cycling, have you heard of the Tour de France?
Yeah, I do.
Right. So you'd know that like there was a cyclist by the name of Lance Armstrong,
Mm-hmm.
and he ended up winning the Tour de France a record 7 times. Like it's never been done before, and it was only revealed a couple of years later, after he retired, that he was using EPOs apart from other drugs to enhance his performance and win each and every one of his 7 titles. And like just think about it from like the side of his competitors. Like they've put like their blood, sweat, and tears, and they've sacrificed a lot to end up being in that position, and they end up getting second or third place, and it's publicly acknowledged.
Mm-hmm.
And then they find out only like a couple of years later that the person who beat them was using steroids and PEDs to basically, rob them of a deserving spot and in the final ranking. So I feel like from that sense, it's incredibly dishonest and disingenuous, and I'd be pissed off. I'm just saying. So like there's that, and then there's also like something which you have experience in, which is bodybuilding. So in bodybuilding, if I'm not mistaken, like people, they use steroids to increase their muscle mass, right? Like I'm not saying that you use steroids. I'm just saying in general, people who use steroids in bodybuilding, they use it to increase their muscle mass, right?
Yeah, that's correct. But you did mention that about the Armstrong incident.
Yeah.
So I think he was asked to return those medals, right? If I'm not
Yes, he
wrong.
was. He was.
Yeah. So that's even I mean, that's something that I wouldn't even want to happen to someone. Like you just won 7 of those and you have to return those medals. That's just pure shame there. So it doesn't matter how many medals you won, but if you're getting caught doing this kind of stuff, so I don't think that's something to look up to or learn from them. I remember that they shared his stories in some of the books that I used to read in the libraries, but it was well before he was caught doing drugs or that incident came to light. Before that, he was being shown as the best guy there due to his endurance, stamina, and whatnot, stuff like that. I remember those headlines. I don't follow all of these sports closely, but I do follow bodybuilding somewhat closely, and I do know when you are competing with the top level of athletes in the world, especially like talking about the Olympia stage, that's where drugs kick in. I'm not even judging them for using drugs. It's like I judge those people. I don't even judge though, I just have some sort of a negative connotation attached to those people who use drugs and then claim natural about it themselves on social media and tell that they haven't used drugs, and it clearly shows that they have been using drugs. I know some people have good genetics and whatnot, but it still takes time to get there. You don't get like crazy jacked and within 6 months or 8 months or 9 months and tell that you're all natural. That's just something that I won't believe in, and it's not like something that will affect me. But I know a lot of youngsters or the teenage kid who don't have any background or understanding about how things work, they get swayed very easily and they think it's something cool or something harmless to take, and they don't know about the repercussions which come along with using drugs, no matter how smart they have been using it.
Right. Okay, so one question which I'd ask you, right, Varnit, is that, like, as someone who's heavily invested into bodybuilding and who spends a lot of time, looking after what they eat, what they put into their bodies, like whether it's vitamins or protein shakes or whatever, like do you think that you would respect someone more if they became ripped and had like a very, very good physique by doing it the natural way and like having like a proper diet and taking legal substances and whatever, as compared to someone who uses steroids?
Like I said before, right, that I have a negative image of people who act false and sit on a high horse and judge people. I do have a problem with that, given that they're doing things wrong, but I don't actually have an issue with people who like use drugs or something and get with their. I do have more respect for the natural guys. I'm biased. I'm slightly biased towards that, and that doesn't completely mean I'm hating on guys who use steroids. I look up to them. I follow some of their training patterns. There are some really great guys who train super hard even with the drug usage or not. It's like that. So there are exceptions in either of these categories. So let's talk about steroids one first. So when it comes to steroids, whoever uses it, they are actually aware of what they're putting inside their body, except those who are completely naive and they're being swayed by. Some people do think that these are some quick fixes or pills that won't have any damage or some negative outcome, so they need to be aware of this. So I don't have any idea about what kind of steroids they use, what kind of cycle they run through, whatever the blast and cruise methods, whatever it is. I do know that it does come with its fair share of negative, let's just say negative effects or results on your body, even if it's as minute as possible. There are some give and take when it comes to drug use. So it's not like that I will respect someone less if they have used steroids. It's nothing like that. I don't have any kind of mindset. It's as long as they're doing the work hard, they're sharing the right information, they're not promoting the usage of those performance enhancing drugs or those physique enhancing drugs, let's just say, for the sake of simplicity. So let's just say that if they're not doing that, they're being wise and sort of giving their fair share of that case, I would respect that person even if they have consumed drugs. I do know a lot of professors or teachers who have been using drugs for in the past and still use, and they are still like decent teachers from where you can learn fitness sciences from. So there's nothing like that have against something against them. It's just like you need to be honest about what you have been doing. You need to tell people what are the repercussions if you continue using those drugs, or even if you start using those drugs. You need to create awareness. You don't have to just fool people for the making the sake of quick money, because there are literally cheap steroids and cheap drugs that some people or some floor trainers on a local level push. So I know what's the on ground reality, what happens. So I am really against those people, but I'm not against those who are doing their honest work, providing the right information, clearing out any misconceptions and stuff like that, if it makes sense.
Yeah, it definitely does. I think you have a very mature perspective uh, on like the whole like idea of using steroids, especially in bodybuilding. And yeah, I respect it. I respect it.
Yeah. So one more thing that I wanted to add was, when it comes to sports or like international, like let's just talk about the biggest sport fest, that is the Olympics, right? So in that, if someone is caught using drugs, that's a bad thing, because I think that's one place where you shouldn't be taking drugs to reach there. I mean, some of the athletes would have consumed and they would have been caught later at one point or the other, but those are the platforms you should be really careful about, like using drugs or performance enhancing drugs or stuff like that. Because when it comes to Olympia or bodybuilding, you need to have that edge, and it's not like that they have completely avoided or said something like clearly that you don't have to use drugs or something. There are separate competitions, separate federations for the same. There are natural bodybuilding competition, natural bodybuilding shows where they do your blood tests and whatnot, to make sure that you haven't been on any kind of drugs or any kind of hormones recently for the past couple of months. So there's that. So you need to choose your sport, you need to pick your poison, and you need to be comfortable with that. That's as simple as that. If you're choosing a sport, you need to be mindful about what rules are there, play fair, and just play hard. That's what I would say.
Yeah, man, I completely agree. Yeah.
All
Well
right.
said.
Yeah, and next thing was that, yeah, from our conversation only, I remember that you were talking something about MMA and the practice you have been, something you were doing about the practice. I think I can remember. I don't recall the exact conversation. So do you practice some kind of martial arts or anything?
Yeah, so I actually do karate. I've been doing it for the past year or so. Ideally, you should be doing martial arts such as karate, like as a kid, basically. Like since like once you reach age 4 or age 5, that's ideally when you should be starting. But the thing is, like I haven't had much time as a child, or even like as a teenager, or even in college, to actually spend serious time doing martial arts. And the only time I could was when I started working. So I started doing karate last year, and yeah, it's extremely fun. I mean, like when you come to class, you see people of all ages, like literally kids as young as 5 all the way to like 28, 30-year-old adults. So like it's definitely interesting, and it teaches you a lot of discipline. It teaches you uh, focus, and yeah.
Okay, so I don't have any context about what happens in MMA. I do remember that I enrolled in some kind of karate classes when I was, I think, 6 years or 5 years old. That was the first and the last time I joined somewhat closely related to some martial art kind of thing. I think I did that for a month. I have very faint memory of it, but I do remember that I was taken out of the class because I started practicing those moves on my brother when I came back home and he got hurt. So we were kids, like I just learned some moves in the school or the classes where it was held. Then I came back and practiced around my brother. So yeah, that's what happened, and yeah, and that was the last end what I saw of it. And do you perform any kind of strength training or weightlifting?
So weightlifting, I right now I can't because like there's no gyms nearby my house, but I do plan on doing it. Like I think it is definitely important, especially when you're doing like some kind of martial arts. You don't do these additional uh like this additional kind of training, like such as weightlifting or like high intensity like, I mean, I'm not sure how to say it, but you definitely can't do things like weightlifting or using additional equipment, like other than what they usually have in the dojo or the gym. So
Hmm.
I definitely do suggest that we should, especially when we're doing martial arts, we should take up additional classes at a local gym just to improve your conditioning and your physique.
Yeah, even if it's for just twice or thrice a week, 3 sessions a week would be enough to keep things moving forward. So that would be actually a good idea to join some kind of strength training or resistance training classes, or some any kind of full body workout routine which involves some weights or machines. That would be a good idea.
Right, right, definitely.
Yeah. And what about nutrition? Like, I have been a fitness coach for almost 5 years. I have dealt with a lot of people. So what were your major highlights when you start taking care of your food intake?
Yeah, so initially, like, I didn't really think too much about nutrition. I always was of the opinion that, you know, uh, ghar ka khana is always the best. I mean, like,
Mhm.
that's all you really need. But the thing is, like, when you actually do research and like be very conscious about like what you eat and when you eat it, like, I think like in those instances, it becomes necessary to start tracking your calories, kind of limiting your intake of certain types of foods such as like rice or wheat. So like like what I've been doing is over the past couple of months, especially thanks to your advice, I'm trying to subconsciously count my calories and like usually I'd eat a lot more rice beforehand, but now I'm sort of limiting it because I want to make sure that I get exactly the right amount of calories every day, and I don't want to overshoot or undershoot it. And also, like even like with regards to other things such as like junk food, like I used to eat a lot of junk food back in the day, but now it's just like I tend to eat only popcorn. And the thing is, like you told me as well that like for popcorn, like it's not something that you should completely replace as a snack, but you can have it from time to time. So what I do is I have it no more than twice every 2 weeks.
Mhm.
And soft drinks are again like I don't have them at all. Maybe like once or twice a month, I guess. Just to enjoy it, I guess, a couple of times. And also like even chocolate. Like I used to enjoy chocolate a lot, especially like as I was a kid growing up. But now it's like I don't even look at it when I'm going to the shop and like buying groceries and stuff. So yeah, like the thing is like counting calories is definitely the most important thing when it comes to nutrition.
Yeah.
That's one thing
So
which I'm
yeah,
doing.
it makes sense. Just one thing that I thought I would just add on to it is that counting calories is sort of necessary when you're trying to reach any goal, especially if you're taking part in any kind of sport or playing a sport on a professional level, or if you're an athlete. Then it becomes all more important to be super careful about what you are eating. When you are eating also matters in that case, but if you're a general population client or a person, let's just say, if you're just trying to do something for better health, improve your physical fitness and something of that sort, then you need to be careful of what you eat and how much you eat. And if you don't learn how to track your calories, you won't know how to go about it to reach your goal. Suppose if you want to gain weight, then you need to have some more calories than what you have been eating so far. If you want to lose weight, you need to consume a little lesser calories than what you have been eating so far. It's as simple as that, but it's definitely not easy. There is a learning curve. You need to spend some time learning the basics, and it's okay if you take your time. Don't think of it something that you will learn within a week or 2 or 3. Think of it as something of a lifelong process, because you're not just going to eat nice or eat healthy for a month and then go back to your weird eating habits of eating outside or random eating. So, and you shouldn't be scared of any food items per se, because I also don't want to give the impression that rice is bad or chocolates are bad or popcorn is bad or anything of that sort, because all of them are fine given that you don't have any allergies. Considering that apart from allergies, you can literally have anything or everything, but you need to be mindful about the quantities. You need to be mindful that you are choosing some balanced meal, not just having some dense calorie food items or drinks just for the sake of your temporary instant gratification that you get while consuming those food items. There's a lot that goes into creating a meal plan that suits your needs, but do what's good for you, do what's best for you, because you got this body just for this one lifetime. You need to take care of it, else it's just going to compound, and later when you're old and then you have tons of diseases, lifestyle diseases, then you will feel bad, why didn't I take care of my health at that time? That's something that I was scared of when I started off my journey. That's what pushed me to get fitter, get better.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. Okay, so like talking about like food, which like things such as junk food, which usually you shouldn't eat, but you can have it from time to time. How do you feel about people like Dwayne The Rock Johnson? Like they have like, I mean, he has like a very strict workout regimen. He's always lifting heavy weights, and then on Sunday he just goes absolutely crazy with his meals. He has like 6 or 10 pancakes, and it's like he treats cheat meal like it's an actual cheat meal. Like he's really putting a lot of effort into I mean, you've seen the videos and photos, right? So like
Yeah.
how do you feel about the way that he approaches his diet regimen? Do you feel that it's appropriate and that it works?
Uh, so a couple of things that comes to mind. First thing is that he is into the show business. Let's just say he is into the show business, entertainment. So he has to do something that seems aggressive. His whole image is all about that raw Viking, brutal kind of look. Even if you see his movies, those are the roles he plays most of the times. You don't see him
Yep.
playing any soft kind of role or something weak or timid. He's always in that aggressive rock mode that you will find in most of his movies, no matter what the genre is. So yeah, first things first, he's into the show business. He has to do certain things a certain way. And don't forget that he has been like into fitness, or let's just say the whole fitness kind of thing, since a very long time. His dad was some kind of wrestler, if I'm not wrong. I'm not sure if
Yep.
that's, yeah. So yeah. So that's what it says. He has been physically active for the most part of his life. He can afford to eat that kind of food because he works real hard for it. And you would have seen his workout videos, right? They don't record his 2 hour clips or 3 hour clips. He would probably go out for a long walk, he would probably go out for a long run, he would still work out for 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hours a day, maybe sometimes twice a day, who knows? We'll never know. And no one knows if he takes any kind of performance enhancing drugs or anything. We don't know anything about that.
Right.
So yeah, so we don't know like literally anything what goes behind the scenes. We only get to see what he's showing on his social media, and we shouldn't be thinking of it like it's something casual that he's showing off. Some things are fine, like normal casual stories, but most of them things are planned when you are at that kind of stage or at that level in your life. So you need to be careful of what kind of information that you are going through. Just even if someone is a very simpleton kind of things that they want to see, look at with a normal picture, normal lens, they should see that he works real hard. He works out probably 7 days a week. He probably doesn't even take rest days. He's just working out. He walks a lot. He does a lot of physical activity. So think of that when you're comparing yourself. Most of us don't do that kind of physical activity like per day. Some of us do. I'm not saying, I'm not going to like leave everyone out on the table, but it's like most of us don't work that hard when it comes to physical activity. Most of us don't lift that heavy when it comes to that. So you can think the ratio and the proportion of what we are doing, what he's doing, is slightly little different. He is a man of big size. Like he has the height, he has the muscles, he carries that much weight, and it's mostly muscle. You can see from the physique that he carries. So that's what my thoughts are on the Rock's cheat day or the cheat diet that he does. And I wouldn't even recommend it to someone. If you're going to try, you can try, but like just think of the consequences as well. You may even get a bad stomach the next day, even if you try to eat that much pancakes a day.
Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah, that's cool. I mean, it makes sense, I guess.
Yeah.
But do you think like from a nutrition perspective, it's acceptable to have like your own version of a cheat day? Like not to his level, but
Mhm.
just a day where you can eat what you want and drink what you want, and like maybe like 1 or 2 days a week. Do you think that would be recommended? I mean, that would be advisable.
It actually depends on what goal you're trying to achieve. Suppose, let's just talk about an athlete again, a bodybuilding athlete. If he has a show 4 months after, like suppose it's Feb and his show is in April or May, then he can't. He doesn't have the luxury to eat those cheat meals or those cheat drinks every week. He has to be super dedicated until the show is done. So, and it takes a lot of time. In that case, he shouldn't be allowed to have that kind of thing, and he will know that he doesn't have to eat that kind of thing before his show. At least when the show is done, he can indulge himself or herself in their favorite food or something like that. And most of the athletes do that because they have been depriving themselves of food for a long time. So that's something that you should consider. But for general population, having a favorite meal every 7-9 days, every other week is fine. That's fine. You're not losing on something that is like, you won't lose anything. You won't even gain anything like that, given that you are keeping a good check on your diet for the rest 6 days or the rest 8 days, whatever the time gap you are keeping it. As long as you're eating mostly healthy, your diet is 99 or 95, even 90% on track, you are doing some sort of physical activity, you are sleeping well, you are resting well, you are recovering well, you are getting stronger in the gym, you're getting stronger, or you're getting better endurance in your running or sports, whatever you are performing. If you're getting better at this, then an occasional cheat meal wouldn't cause any harm.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah, I'll definitely take that into consideration
Yeah.
in my own diet plans.
Yeah, you shouldn't deprive yourself of these luxuries as well. They are here for a reason. You should enjoy life at times. I'm not saying to just enjoy life at all times. You do get to enjoy. You have someone close, marriage anniversary, some birthdays, your birthday and stuff like that. You don't have to deprive yourself of that kind of event, that you are skipping on meals unless it's absolutely necessary. In case of those athletes, let's just say those athletes might have to sacrifice such events, but they know what they're doing, they know what the consequences are, they know what they're getting into, so it's a conscious choice. You always have the choice of eating what's right and eating what's wrong. It's like just delaying gratification for the short-term benefit or whatever. Like, I mean, it's just that simple. People just don't think that way, and I think that should change over time.
Yeah, right. Understood. Absolutely.
Yeah. So whoever the listeners were, I thank you for listening to this whole podcast. I know it was a very mixed type of conversation that I had with Eswar today, but I hope you find some kind of value out of it. And if you have any feedback for me, just drop a comment if you're listening on YouTube, or just reach out to me on Twitter and provide me some feedback on the same. And I just want to thank Eswar for joining me in this podcast and being a sport about it.
Thank you so much again, once more, for having me. Yeah, we went in multiple directions with this podcast, but I feel that the way that you were able to direct the conversation was really cool. And yeah, I enjoyed this, man. I hope to do this again sometime in the future. It was fun.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
Thanks.